My fiancé announced. I'm not wearing that cheap ring. I deserve better. I smiled, put it back in the box, and called the jeweler with a very specific request the next morning. My name is Noah. I'm 28, and I never thought the moment I proposed would be remembered not for love, but for humiliation. Marina, the woman I had been dating for nearly 3 years, was sitting across from me in a small Italian restaurant downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it was the kind of place where we'd had countless date nights, and I had always imagined it would be special to ask her to marry me there. The evening started off fine. She wore a dark green dress that shimmered under the warm lights. She kept checking her reflection in the window, fixing her hair, laughing too loudly when the waiter made a joke. I noticed it, but I brushed it off as nerves. I was nervous too. My hand kept brushing the small box in my pocket, the weight of it reminding me of the step I was about to take. When dessert came out, I pushed my plate aside and reached for the box. The chatter in the restaurant dimmed for me, like I was underwater, every sound muffled except the pounding in my chest. I got down on one knee, pulled out the ring, and asked the question I had rehearsed in my head 100 times. For a split second, her expression lit up with something close to shock. But then, just as quickly, her face hardened. She didn't cover her mouth in surprise or cry like I had seen in those endless engagement videos online. Instead, she leaned back, narrowed her eyes at the ring, and let out a laugh that didn't sound nervous at all. "You're serious? That's the ring," she said, not even lowering her voice. The people at the tables around us turned their heads. My throat went dry. I glanced down at the ring again. It wasn't massive, but it was a classic design, a simple white gold band with a modest diamond I had worked overtime for months to afford. To me, it symbolized effort and devotion. To her, it was apparently a punchline. Marina shook her head, her words sharp and deliberate. "Noah, I'm not wearing that cheap thing. I deserve better." The waiter, standing nearby with a tray, froze mid-step. A couple 2 tables over stopped mid-bite. I stayed on one knee, but my entire body stiffened. I wanted to disappear. I closed the box without saying a word, stood up, and placed it back into my pocket. The restaurant was silent except for the sound of Marina's laugh, which she let out like she had won some twisted game. That moment could have broken me. Instead, something inside me shifted. I forced a smile, sat back down, and signaled for the check. Her voice carried over the table, unbothered. "If you think I'm going to show that ring to my friends, you're out of your mind." My cousin's fiancé gave her a rock twice the size. I'm not settling for less. The humiliation was sharp, but I didn't let it show. I nodded, paid the bill, and walked her to the car. She complained the whole way about her shoes, about the restaurant not being as high-end as she had hoped, about the fact that I had embarrassed her by not spending more. I barely responded. My mind was already moving in a new direction. That night, when I dropped her off at her apartment, she gave me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek and reminded me she had a dress fitting in 2 weeks just in case I decided to do better. Then she slammed the door behind her. I drove home in silence, parked outside my apartment, and sat there in the dark for an hour. My humiliation turned into something sharper, clarity. Marina had exposed herself, and I finally saw her without the fog of infatuation. She wasn't just materialistic. She was cruel, and she felt entitled to it. At 2 in the morning, I pulled out the ring box again. I stared at it, not with sadness, but with a strange kind of calm. She thought she had won. She thought I would crawl back, desperate to prove myself. That was her mistake. The next morning, I called the jeweler. "Morning, Noah," the jeweler said, recognizing my voice. I had spent enough time in that store agonizing over rings that the man knew me by name. "I need something done," I told him. "Not a new ring, an engraving." He asked what I wanted engraved. I paused, letting the words settle in my head before I spoke them aloud. 4 words, paid in full debt. Inside the band. Small, discreet, but clear. The jeweler chuckled. "That's unusual." "It's perfect," I said. By noon, the engraving was ready. I picked it up, held the band between my fingers, and imagined her reaction when she realized what those words meant. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. The days that followed were strange. Marina acted like nothing had happened. She texted me about wedding venues, flowers, color palettes, as though her public rejection of my proposal was just a hiccup, something to be brushed aside. She sent me photos of her cousin's massive engagement ring with captions like, "See, this is what I deserve." Each message was like another log on the fire inside me, but I didn't argue. I responded with short, agreeable phrases, never showing my hand. Her friends started to catch wind of the proposal story. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Marina had told everyone I tried to cheap out, and she had taught me a lesson. That same acquaintance raised an eyebrow when I asked casually, "And what did people think?" Apparently, half of them admired her standards. The other half whispered that she was ungrateful and mean. I let it all simmer. The more she bragged, the deeper she dug her own grave. The next weekend, we attended her family's barbecue. Her parents were wealthy, and their backyard looked like something out of a magazine. I walked in, greeted them politely, and noticed right away that Marina had already told them the story. Her father gave me a condescending pat on the back and muttered, "Don't worry, son. One day you'll be able to afford the right ring." Her mother shook her head at me as if I were a failed investment. Marina, meanwhile, strutted around in a sundress, telling her cousins about how she had refused to settle. I stood there smiling, sipping a beer, saying little. Nobody knew that the ring in my pocket carried an engraving sharp enough to slice through her pride like glass. That night, after the barbecue, Marina and I had our first fight about money. She demanded to know why I hadn't started looking at bigger rings yet. "You need to understand," she said, "that people are going to look at me and judge me by the ring. It's about status. I'm not going to be embarrassed every time I hold out my hand." I asked her if that was really what mattered most to her. She didn't hesitate. "Of course it is." That was the moment I knew. She wasn't just arrogant. She was dangerous to my future. But instead of walking away, I leaned back, let her rant, and gave her the impression I was caving. I told her I'd think about it. Her expression softened immediately, like she had won a small victory. She even kissed me goodnight. When she closed her eyes, I lay there in the dark beside her, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't angry anymore. I was patient. 2 days later, I quietly moved half of our joint savings into a separate account she didn't know about. I did it without hesitation. She would never get her hands on all of it. Meanwhile, Marina doubled down on her behavior. She bragged to her bridesmaids about how she had trained me to aim higher. She began hinting to her parents that they should chip in for the wedding since I was still getting on my feet. I smiled and played the role of the supportive fiancé. But in my head, the plan was already set in motion. The ring sat in its box on my desk at home, the engraving hidden inside, waiting like a loaded trap. By the end of that week, I realized something else. Marina wasn't just ungrateful, she was careless. She left her phone unlocked around me, receipts scattered in her purse, credit card bills lying open on the counter. One evening, while she was in the shower, I picked up one of those bills. My stomach flipped when I saw the charges. Luxury purchases, dresses, spa trips, a new phone, all of it charged to a card in her name, but a card I knew she had signed up for behind my back, using my income information to qualify. That was when everything clicked. I didn't need to spend a cent more on her. I didn't even need to argue. All I needed was to hand her the rope, and she would hang herself with it. And the ring, the one she had called cheap, the one she thought she had rejected, would become the weapon that started it all. The engraved ring sat in its small velvet box on my desk, quietly gleaming under the lamplight. Every time I looked at it, I thought of Marina's voice in that restaurant, sharp, mocking, dismissive. She had expected me to come crawling back with a bigger, flashier diamond. She had no idea that I was already preparing to hand her something far more expensive than she ever wanted, and in the cruelest way possible. The plan started simple. Marina's pride was her greatest weakness. She wanted the world to see her as untouchable, as someone who only accepted the best. So I gave her something that looked like the best, while ensuring it was nothing but a ticking time bomb. I went back to the jeweler, acting like a man ready to spend more than he should. I asked him for a band that looked heavier, more luxurious, and a diamond that sparkled brighter under the light. He showed me options far out of my price range, and I let him believe I was stretching my limits. What Marina never knew was that the cost wasn't mine at all. I had her credit card number, pulled from one of the bills she had left lying around. I let the jeweler charge the full amount to her card, smiled politely, and walked away with a ring that wasn't just hers in spirit. It was literally hers in debt. Inside, of course, remained the engraving, paid in full debt. The irony was almost too much to handle. I chose to present the ring during a quiet dinner at her apartment a week later. No public proposal this time, no audience, no humiliation for me. She had humiliated herself enough already. When I opened the box and showed her the new ring, her reaction was everything I expected. She gasped, covered her mouth, and immediately slipped it on her finger. "This," she said, admiring it under the soft light, "is what I'm talking about. Now this is worthy of me." She didn't ask how I could afford it. She didn't care. All she cared about was how it would look when she flashed it in front of her friends, her coworkers, her cousins. She pulled out her phone immediately, snapping photos and sending them off in group chats. Notifications pinged constantly. Compliments flooded in. She basked in it like it was sunlight. I sat back, watching her, sipping my wine. She thought she had won. She had no idea that she had just strapped herself to the very debt she despised. Within days, Marina became unbearable. She walked with her hand raised unnaturally high, making sure everyone could see the ring. At brunch with her bridesmaids, she accidentally, knocked her glass just so she could draw attention to the sparkle. She posted a close-up on Instagram with the caption, "He finally got it right." I stayed silent. The more she bragged, the more satisfying the fall would be. But as I let her flaunt the ring, I tightened my own preparations. I moved the rest of our savings out of reach, leaving only a small balance in the joint account so it didn't look suspicious. I spoke to our landlord quietly about changing the lease. Since Marina wasn't on it, it was simple enough to arrange that she had no claim to the apartment. Every step I took was deliberate, quiet, and controlled. She had no clue. Then came the discovery that pushed everything even further. It was a Thursday evening. Marina had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. She had been messaging someone, and when the screen lit up with another notification, I saw a name that didn't fit. Stefan. I knew of him in passing, one of her co-workers from the marketing department, a married man in his early 30s. Marina had always laughed about him, claiming he was too sleazy and too old. But the tone of the messages told a different story. "Wish you were here tonight. Can't stop thinking about the other day. We have to be more careful. Noah's not stupid." My hands clenched around the edge of the counter. The betrayal stung, but I didn't let it show when she came out of the shower moments later. She hummed to herself, towel wrapped around her, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. I wanted to confront her, to shout, to demand answers. But instead, I memorized the words I had seen. Later that night, when she was asleep, I carefully took her phone from her nightstand, unlocked it with her fingerprint, and scrolled. What I found confirmed everything. Dozens of messages with Stefan, plans to meet up after work, jokes at my expense, flirtations that left no doubt about what was happening. One message stood out above the rest. "Don't worry, babe. Once the wedding's over, I'll figure out how to tell him. Until then, just keep playing along." I put the phone back exactly where it had been, lay down beside her, and stared at the ceiling until morning. The next few days became an act. I played the role of the doting fiancé, while inside I was collecting evidence, building a case without ever telling her. I forwarded key messages to myself, snapped photos of her phone screen while she slept, and kept everything organized. Not because I needed them for court or anything like that, but because when the time came, I wanted everyone to see exactly who she really was. Marina, oblivious, became more brazen. She invited Stefan to our engagement party under the excuse of keeping things professional since he's part of her team. When I raised an eyebrow, she shrugged it off. "Don't be insecure. He's married." The audacity almost made me laugh. Around this time, cracks started to appear in her financial facade. The credit card bills piled higher. She spent recklessly, designer clothes, a spa retreat, even a deposit on a wedding dress far outside what we had budgeted. She treated money like it was endless, while I knew she was unknowingly burying herself deeper into her own trap. One night, I watched her at her vanity, slipping on earrings and admiring herself in the mirror, the engraved ring catching the light. "You're quiet lately," she said, not even glancing back at me. "Just tired from work," I replied. "You should be excited," she said. "We're building our future." I looked at her reflection and thought, "You're building your own destruction, and you don't even know it." By mid-month, the jeweler's bill had arrived, in Marina's name, sent to her email, but I had access. I saw the total, a figure that would make her choke. I could have told her then, but I didn't. Timing was everything. I needed her to wear that ring proudly, to flaunt it, to make it part of her identity before the truth tore it all apart. The engagement party was set for the end of the month. Her parents had rented out a banquet hall. Marina was giddy, obsessing over every detail, every guest list change, every decoration. She spent hours picking out a dress for herself, while I let her think I was indifferent. She invited everyone who mattered to her, family, friends, co-workers. Stefan was on the list, of course. So was his wife, though Marina clearly hoped she wouldn't show. I said nothing. I just prepared. The ring had done its job. It had inflated her pride, distracted her from my moves, and tethered her to a debt she didn't even realize she carried. But the ring was only the beginning. The real collapse was coming, and it was going to be public. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to Marina snore softly beside me, her phone buzzing occasionally with late-night messages she thought I didn't see. I stared at the ceiling, running through everything in my head like a chess game. Every move she had made was selfish. Every word she had spoken was cruel. Every betrayal she had committed was deliberate. And tomorrow, I was going to let her expose herself in front of everyone she had tried so hard to impress. The banquet hall smelled of champagne and roses. Marina's parents had gone all out, renting a place with chandeliers, white linen tables, and a stage set up for speeches. It was meant to be the highlight of Marina's social life, a chance for her to parade herself and her new diamond in front of every family member, co-worker, and childhood friend she wanted to impress. When we arrived, Marina clung to my arm, already smiling for the cameras. Her cousins hovered with their phones out, snapping photos. Marina leaned into me, whispering, "Don't slouch. People will be looking at us." I gave her a small nod, my face calm, though my stomach buzzed with a different kind of energy. This wasn't nerves. This was anticipation. Her father shook my hand with the same patronizing tone he'd always had. "Looks like you finally did it right, Noah. About time." Her mother's eyes went straight to Marina's hand. "Now that's a ring worthy of our daughter." Marina lifted her chin proudly, turning her hand just so the diamond caught the light of the chandeliers. The oohs and ahs rippled through the guests. She soaked it in like it was fuel. She had no idea she was carrying the instrument of her own downfall. The night started normally enough. Drinks, small talk, photos. Marina was in her element, introducing me as if I were a trophy she had trained into compliance. She dropped comments like, "He finally came through," and "I knew he had it in him." Each one drew forced laughs, side glances, and whispered conversations. I played along, smiling, nodding, letting her dig herself deeper. Halfway through the evening, Stefan arrived. He came alone, wearing a smug grin that made my fists itch. Marina lit up the second she saw him, excusing herself from her bridesmaids and drifting toward him with a little too much excitement. I watched from across the room as they leaned close, speaking in hushed voices. A hand on her arm, a brush of her hair behind her ear. They were careful, but not careful enough. Stefan's absence of his wife didn't go unnoticed, either. Whispers spread fast in a room full of people who thrived on gossip. I didn't approach them. Not yet. Timing was everything. Dinner came next. Plates of roasted chicken, salmon, and pasta were served as the room buzzed with chatter. Marina insisted on making a toast. She stood, glass raised high, her ring glittering under the light, and said, "To the man who finally proved he could rise to the occasion." A wave of laughter, half genuine, half awkward, passed through the tables. My jaw tightened, but I smiled anyway. She thought she was clever. She had no idea that the punchline wasn't hers. When she sat back down, she leaned close and whispered, "See how happy they are. You should thank me for making you step up." I sipped my drink, saying nothing. The moment came after dessert, when the room had quieted and the stage was set for speeches. Her father had just finished a long monologue about family, tradition, and expectations. People clapped politely. Marina stood, ready to announce the wedding date. That's when I rose too. "Before we move forward," I said, my voice steady, "I'd like to share something with everyone." The room fell silent. Marina blinked, surprised, but forced a smile, as if she assumed I was about to shower her with compliments. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I handed it to Marina in front of everyone. "This is for you." Confused, she opened it. Her smile faltered. Inside was a printed copy of the jeweler's bill, thousands of dollars, charged to her own card. Her name was bold at the top. She looked up, panic flickering in her eyes. "What is this?" I spoke clearly, letting the words carry. "It's the bill for your ring. The one you've been flaunting. I didn't pay for it. You did. Every cent engraved inside is a reminder. Paid in full debt. Because that's what this ring really means. Not love. Not commitment. Just debt." Gasps filled the room. Heads turned. Her bridesmaids leaned forward to see. Her parents' faces drained of color. Marina stammered, "That's not. He's lying. This isn't." But I wasn't finished. I tapped my phone, and the projector screen behind us flickered to life. Messages filled the wall, screenshots of her late-night conversations with Stefan, lines of flirtation, plans to meet, jokes about me. The silence in the hall shattered into chaos. Stefan, pale, shot to his feet. "This is private," he barked. But the damage was already done. Someone in the back gasped louder than the rest. Stefan's wife had arrived after all, slipping in unnoticed. She stood there now, frozen, reading the messages for herself. Her face crumpled as she turned and stormed out, slamming the doors behind her. Marina's friends covered their mouths. Her parents looked like they had been slapped. The room was a storm of whispers and glares. Marina tried to grab my arm. "Noah, stop this, please, let's talk." I pulled away, my voice calm. "No more talking. You wanted a better ring, a better life, better everything. All you've done is bury yourself. Everyone can see it now." I gestured to her hand. "Go ahead, show them the engraving. Let them read it." She hesitated, but someone had already taken her hand, curious. The band passed around quickly, and when the words inside were read aloud, "Paid in full, debt," the hall erupted. Some laughed. Others shook their heads in disgust. The whispers turned into open ridicule. Her humiliation was complete. I didn't wait for more. I stepped off the stage, walked calmly through the stunned crowd, and left the hall without looking back. Outside, The night air was cool against my skin. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of months of deception slide off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. Behind me, through the tall windows, I could see the chaos unfolding. Marina pleading, Stefan trying to slip out unnoticed, her parents looking ready to explode. The banquet hall that had been decorated for celebration had turned into a courtroom, and Marina was on trial with no defense left. On the drive home, my phone buzzed constantly. Messages from Marina, from her parents, from mutual friends. Some were angry, some were supportive, some just wanted details. I ignored them all. When I reached my apartment, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the empty ring box on my nightstand. The trap had worked better than I imagined. Marina hadn't just been exposed, she had been destroyed in the exact arena she valued most, her reputation. And yet, I knew this wasn't the end. Humiliation was only the beginning. The real consequences would come after, when her debts caught up with her, when her family turned their backs, when Stefan's marriage collapsed. The storm was just starting. The morning after the engagement party, I woke to a phone buzzing nonstop on the nightstand. Not mine, Marina's. I had left her in that banquet hall the night before, standing in the middle of her ruined celebration, but she hadn't stopped calling since. 48 missed calls, dozens of texts. Every message was a blend of rage, panic, and desperate bargaining. You humiliated me for no reason. We can fix this if you just take the video down. My parents are furious. You have to explain to them. I forgive you, just come over and talk. Forgive me. The irony almost made me laugh. I set the phone face down and made coffee. The calmness in me felt almost unnatural, like my body hadn't caught up with the storm I'd set loose. But as I sipped the bitter liquid and stared out the window at the quiet street below, I realized it wasn't numbness. It was freedom. For years, I had lived under the weight of her demands, her expectations, her endless comparisons to people richer, flashier, better. Now the weight was gone, and all that was left was the echo of her collapse. By noon, the calls shifted. Now they were coming from her parents. Her father's voicemail was cold and clipped. You've made a fool of yourself and of Marina. You'll regret this, Noah. Her mother's message was shrill, a mix of scolding and pleading. Do you realize what you've done to her? To us? This was supposed to be a happy occasion. They weren't angry that their daughter had betrayed me. They were angry that I had exposed it. I let the messages pile up. By the third day, the cracks began to show in Marina's perfect facade. Friends unfollowed her online. The bridesmaids group chat dissolved into silence. Stefan, predictably, disappeared, leaving her messages unanswered. His wife filed for divorce immediately, citing Marina by name in the paperwork. Word spread fast, and with every retelling, Marina's reputation twisted further. At work, whispers followed her into meetings. I knew because one of my old college friends worked in the same company and texted me updates. Dude, she's radioactive here. People are avoiding her like she's contagious. The humiliation that had seemed like the climax at the engagement party was only the opening act. Then the bills started arriving. The jeweler's statement landed in her mailbox like a hammer. Thousands of dollars charged to her account, plus interest. The engraving, the paid in full, debt, was more than words now. It was reality. She tried to call me again, begging. Noah, please, I don't have that kind of money. I thought you paid for it. You have to help me. I responded once, just once. I texted, it's your ring. You said you deserved better. Now you have it. Paid in full. After that, I blocked her number. Her parents cut her off next. The night of the party had embarrassed them more than anything else, and they weren't about to bankroll a daughter who had become the town scandal. The allowance they had been giving her since college ended overnight. I heard from mutual friends that Marina moved out of her upscale apartment within weeks. The landlord had served her notice after months of unpaid rent, money she had assumed I would cover. She tried to move back in with her parents, but they refused. Sort out your own mess, her father told her. The irony was sharp. The same parents who had mocked me for not being enough now abandoned her when she had no one else. Meanwhile, I tied up the last loose ends. I closed the joint account completely. I spoke to my HR department to have my direct deposits rerouted to the private account I had opened weeks before. I even filed a formal report regarding the unauthorized use of my income on her credit application. It wasn't spite. It was protection. If she tried to drag me into her financial collapse, I had the documents to prove I had nothing to do with it. By the time she realized what I had done, it was too late. Every exit she might have used was blocked. The last time I saw Marina was almost 2 months later. I was walking out of a coffee shop downtown when I spotted her across the street. She looked nothing like the woman I had once thought I would marry. Her hair was unkempt, her makeup smudged, her clothes far cheaper than the designer labels she used to flaunt. She was on the phone, arguing with someone, her voice sharp and desperate. She didn't notice me, and I didn't call out to her. I just watched for a moment, then turned and walked the other way. The aftermath didn't just affect her. Stefan's career took a hit when his divorce became public and his ex-wife leaked the messages to his company. He was quietly moved to a smaller role, his reputation scarred. Marina's name, tied to his, was dragged through every whisper in the office. Her bridesmaids avoided her. Former friends joked about the engraving whenever rings came up in conversation. Paid in full, debt became a cruel nickname she couldn't shake. And me? I built a new life, quietly, deliberately. I moved into a different apartment, away from the memories. I focused on my work, took on a promotion I had been too distracted to chase before, and started saving properly. I didn't jump into dating right away. I wasn't bitter, but I was cautious. Trust wasn't something I was willing to hand out easily anymore. But there was peace in that. Months later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Marina had taken a job at a retail store to cover her debts. She was working long hours, barely making enough to keep up with her credit payments. The once proud woman who had mocked me for being cheap now couldn't afford dinner out without counting pennies. Hard karma. Nothing poetic, nothing cinematic. Just reality grinding her down the way she had tried to grind me down. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret the way I handled it. The public exposure, the humiliation, the debt trap. My answer is always the same. No, Marina wasn't just selfish. She was cruel. She wanted to build a life on someone else's back while laughing at their effort. If I had married her, she would have bled me dry, drained my savings, and left me broken. Instead, she destroyed herself with her own pride. All I did was hold up the mirror. In the end, the ring told the story better than I ever could. She had demanded better. She had insisted she deserved more. And what she got was exactly what she asked for, a symbol of her greed, engraved with the truth she couldn't escape, paid in full, debt. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day. And trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.